Bin Laden existed in Afghanistan exactly 17 years before our government existed. We inherited him. And the fact is that such people were instigated by the CIA and by the government of America in that time to go and fight the Soviets. And such people were called the heroes of independence. And all of a sudden, they have changed now to terrorists. We don't say that we are defending terrorism, but we need to know whether they are really terrorists or not. We were called the puppets of America until 1998. So we don't know as to what to do now. We have been given no counter proposals. And now the perception in Afghanistan is that maybe the United States is always looking for a boogeyman. Because so many people have their jobs following bin Laden now. If bin Laden is not there, they will lose jobs.
Throughout the 1980s, Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld were key players in one of the most highly classified programs of the Reagan administration. Presently, Cheney is working as a Republican congressman, while Rumsfeld is the head of the pharmaceutical company G.D. Searle. At least once per year, they both leave their day jobs for periods of 3 to 4 days. They head to Andrews Air Force Base near Washington, D.C., and along with 40 to 60 federal officials and one member of the Reagan cabinet, are taken to a remote location within the United States, such as an underground bunker. While they are gone, none of their work colleagues, or even their wives, know where they are. They are participating in a detailed planning exercise for keeping government running during and after a nuclear war with the Soviet Union. This highly secret continuity of government program is known as Project 908. The idea is that if the United States were under a nuclear attack, 3 teams would be sent from Washington to separate locations around the United States to prepare to take leadership of the country. If somehow one team was located and hit with a nuclear weapon, the second or third team could take its place. Each of the 3 teams include representatives from the State Department, Defense Department, CIA, and various domestic policy agencies. The program is run by a new government agency called the National Program Office. Based in the Washington area, it has a budget of hundreds of millions of dollars a year, which grows to $1 billion per year by the end of Reagan's first term in office. Within the National Security Council, the action officer involved in the continuity of government program is Oliver North, who is a key figure in the mid-1980s Iran-Contra scandal. Reagan's vice president, George H.W. Bush, also supervises some of the program's efforts, as well as Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld and other known figures involved in the continuity of government exercises included Kenneth Duberstein, who served as a time of Reagan's chief of staff, and future CIA Director James Woolsey. Another regular participant is Richard Clarke, who on 9/11 will be the White House chief of counter-terrorism. The program, though, is extra-constitutional, as it establishes a process for designating a new U.S. president that is nowhere authorized in the U.S. Constitution or federal law. After H.W. Bush is elected president in 1988 and the effective end of the Soviet Union a year later, the exercises, however, continue. They will go on after Bill Clinton is elected president, but will then be based around the threat posed by terrorists rather than the Soviet Union. According to journalist James Mann, the participation of Rumsfeld and Cheney in these exercises demonstrates a broader truth about them. Mann would go on to write, over 3 decades from the Ford administration onward, even when they were out of the executive branch of government, they were never too far away. They stayed in touch with its defense military and intelligence officials and were regularly called upon by those officials. Cheney and Rumsfeld were, in a sense, a part of the permanent, though hidden, national security apparatus of the United States. The plan they rehearsed for in the continuity of government exercises will be activated, supposedly for the first time, in the hours during and after the September 11th, 2001 attacks. The program is of particular interest today because it helps to explain the thinking and behavior of the second Bush administration in the hours, days, and months after the terrorist attacks on September 11, 2001. Mann ended his statements with a poignant thought. Immediately after the fall of the Soviet Union, the exercises would go on to continue, but this time based upon a possible terrorist attack. Clarke revealed that he had participated regularly in these exercises over the previous 20 years. He recalls that he'd gone into caves and mountains in remote locations and spent days on end in miserable conditions, pretending that the rest of the world had blown up after going through the questions, going through the drill. After the Soviet fell, a new enemy had to be replaced. Exercises had to continue. Clarke was a senior analyst at the State Department since 1979 and rises to prominence during the Reagan administration when he becomes Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Intelligence. After being a member of the National Security Council since 1992, he is appointed as counter-terrorism National Security Council in 1998. By October 1984, primarily due to the pressure from Charlie Wilson, a Democrat, the CIA's budget for the Afghan covert operations has tripled in just a matter of a few weeks. The CIA initially resisted, accepted the funds, but according to CIA Director William Casey and Executive Assistant Robert Gates, Wilson just steamrolled the CIA's Near East Division and the CIA for that matter. Richard Clarke will later claim that unclassified studies show that covert aid grew from 35 million in 1982 to an astounding 600 million in 1987. With few exceptions, the funds bought material that was given to Afghan fighters by the Pakistan ISI. CIA personnel were not authorized to enter Afghanistan, except rarely. The Afghan Mujahideen, especially the Arabs, hated non-government organizations, and slowly the NGOs began to leave the country for fear of their lives. The Afghans didn't like the Arabs, but the Arabs were becoming the majority in the war at the very tail end, even though they only made up approximately 10% of the fighting force against the Soviets. As the Afghans began to be destroyed, not after the war, but during two civil wars in the country, the Arabs started taking center fold. It seems that a new enemy was approaching, one that would replace the Soviets in the Cold War. Shortly after the Soviets' retreat from Afghanistan in 1989, Morton Abramowitz, president of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace in 1991, establishes a number of blue ribbon commissions headed by a select group of foreign policy elite to create a new post-Cold War foreign policy framework for the United States. Some of the group's members are Madeleine Albright, Henry Cisneros, John Deutsch, Richard Holbrooke, Alice Rivlin, David Gergen, Admiral William Crowe, Leon Firth, as well as Richard Pearl and James Schlesinger, the two token conservatives who would quickly resign because they had their own plans involved regarding foreign policy, Israel, and the United States. The commission will issue a number of policy papers recommending the increased use of military force to intervene in the domestic conflicts of other countries. Some of the commission's members are appointed to brief Democratic presidential candidates on the commission's reports ahead of their release under the Clinton administration. Abramowitz is also influential in the career of counterterrorism czar Richard Clarke, who refers to Abramowitz as his boss and mentor at the State Department. Meanwhile, the CIA were beginning to closely monitor a young Saudi investor who offered his services to the Afghan Mujahideen in the mid-1980s. His name is Osama bin Laden.